For the first time in generations, Canada isn't building someone else's future. It's building its own. For decades, the heartbeat of Canadian industry pulsed in rhythm with America's needs. Our mills rolled steel for their cars, their skyscrapers, their pipelines. Our workers built their strength, while our own independence rusted quietly in the shadows. But that chapter is closing, fast. In a remarkable shift that's sending shockwaves through boardrooms from Toronto to Washington, Industry Minister Mélanie Joly announced a new doctrine: Canada will no longer serve another nation's economy before its own. No grandstanding.
Subscribe before moving forward.
No bluster. Just conviction, the kind that shakes an entire system awake. The new policy marks a once-in-a-century transformation in how Canada sees itself, from a secondary supplier in the American engine to the engineer of its own destiny. The message is simple but monumental. Canada builds for Canada first. For years, our factories were designed to feed someone else's market. The steel made in Hamilton or Sault Ste. Marie was stamped to match the specs of Detroit's auto plants, not the bridges, pipelines, or railways at home. Our industries were built for export, not endurance. Now, all that is changing. The Carney government, led by Prime Minister Mark Carney and Minister Joly, is realigning Canada's entire industrial machine around national priorities: infrastructure, housing, shipbuilding, and clean energy, all with Canadian materials, Canadian labor, and Canadian design. At the heart of this transformation lies the upcoming Buy Canadian law, a policy so ambitious it's been called economic nation building. It requires every major federal project to use domestic resources by default. That means bridges built with Canadian steel, homes framed by Canadian lumber, ships constructed from Canadian metal and powered by Canadian workers. And the beauty of it? This isn't reactionary. It's revolutionary. Trump's tariffs once hit Canadian industries like a hammer, but now that same hammer has forged something new: self-reliance. Instead of pleading for exceptions, Canada is rewriting the rules. Instead of chasing access to foreign markets, it's creating its own. This is not isolationism, it's economic maturity. When Joly spoke about the shift, her words carried the weight of a generation's frustration finally finding direction. She described the mood across the manufacturing sector as electric, like the maple leaf is tattooed on everyone's heart. In cities like Hamilton, Edmonton, and Sault Ste. Marie, factories are being retooled, not to serve the U.S. auto belt, but to serve the nation that built them in the first place. Ottawa is investing billions to modernize plants, train workers, and redirect production toward Canada's vast domestic demand. It's a national awakening, quiet, deliberate, unstoppable. And it's making American tariffs look irrelevant. Trump's protectionist moves, meant to corner Canada, have ironically cornered him. The more Washington tries to pressure Ottawa, the more Ottawa learns to thrive without Washington. The old dependency, those long years of "please don't tariff us" politics, is being dismantled piece by piece, beam by beam. The Buy Canadian era has arrived. Factories once tied to American contracts are now winning domestic ones under the Build Canada Homes program, a massive federal initiative creating both housing and industrial demand in one stroke. Every project feeds into the next, forming a self-reinforcing cycle of jobs, production, and national pride. This is Carney's quiet genius, not confrontation, but insulation. While Trump brandishes tariffs like weapons, Carney is building armor, economic independence disguised as industrial planning. Together, he and Joly are constructing a trillion-dollar framework designed to make Canada's economy untouchable. The effect is rippling beyond economics. It's cultural, political, emotional. In shipyards from Halifax to Vancouver, vessels are now being built entirely with domestic steel, ships that will sail with a message louder than any speech: Canada is its own anchor. It's also a message to every Canadian worker who's ever wondered whether their labor truly mattered. It does now. Every ton of metal, every girder, every home built is a piece of national sovereignty made tangible. And that's what makes this movement unstoppable. It's not just policy, it's identity. In Washington, officials are reportedly alarmed by what they're calling the Carney Doctrine, a blend of economic independence and political poise that sidesteps U.S. leverage entirely. Canada isn't fighting trade wars anymore, it's opting out of them. Each move Ottawa makes chips away at America's dominance over continental supply chains. Each factory that shifts to domestic production redraws the map of North American power. And here's the quiet irony: this wasn't born from conflict, it was born from crisis. Trump's tariffs, designed to punish Canada, forced it to reimagine itself. The U.S. protectionism that once exposed Canadian vulnerability now fuels Canadian strength. Every blow landed by Washington has become a spark for innovation north of the border. Even the private sector sees it. GM, Stellantis, and others who once begged for U.S. exemptions are now adjusting their production lines to align with Canadian standards. Because when Ottawa guarantees billions in local contracts, you don't need Washington's blessing, you need Ottawa's blueprint. Investors have started calling this transformation the Northern Boom. Economists, the decoupling of dependence. Canadians, they simply call it long overdue. For the first time in living memory, the government isn't asking, how will America respond? It's asking, what does Canada need? And that question alone changes everything. Inside the corridors of power, Carney's allies describe this as a generational plan, one that stretches far beyond his current mandate. The vision is clear: to make every major Canadian industry capable of self-sustained growth without leaning on U.S. policy winds. Next in line is the National Infrastructure Sovereignty Act, a sweeping framework that will tie public funding to domestic sourcing, ensuring that taxpayer dollars never fuel foreign dependency again. Step by step, Canada is shifting from participant in someone else's system to architect of its own. The political symbolism is extraordinary. Imagine, a nation once defined by its proximity to power, now defined by its independence from it. And yet, this new nationalism isn't rooted in division, it's rooted in dignity. The welders in Hamilton, the mill workers in Alberta, the engineers in Montreal, they're no longer part of someone else's supply chain. They're part of a national mission. That sense of pride, once fragile, is now hardened like the very steel being poured in Canadian foundries. Even global observers are starting to notice. Analysts from Europe to Asia are calling this Canada's model of modern sovereignty, a way for mid-sized economies to survive in a world of giants by becoming giants in their own right. Because real independence isn't signed on paper. It's built, piece by piece, in the hands of a nation that refuses to be defined by another's demand. Canada isn't shouting about its power, it's showing it. Through industry. Through innovation. Through a quiet revolution that's echoing louder with every project completed. The old Canada, the one that waited, that compromised, that built for others, is gone. What stands now is a country rediscovering its strength, its confidence, its pride. A Canada that no longer needs permission to lead. And as new bridges rise, new homes are framed, and new ships cut through the Atlantic waves, one truth is clear. Canada's future is no longer outsourced. It's handcrafted, by its workers, its industries, and its unshakable belief in itself. This is not just economic policy. This is a declaration, not in words, but in steel. A promise that from this moment forward, Canada builds not for anyone else, but for the generations that will call this land home.